far as concentration, when you're competing, the best thing to do is not to look at the score, either your score or the opponent's score, because your opponent's score doesn't really mean much, does it? If you perform at the level, at your best level, you have a better chance of winning the match. And we'll also, I think, when you tend to look at your opponent's score, you tend to pace with him, and you tend to squeeze, and you tend to tense up. Whereas if you're just kind of into your own little world, you really don't know what's going on around you, and automatically your concentration gets better.
One of the most difficult situations to be in is bowling league and trying to concentrate. You're really wanting to socialize with the other members of the team and walking around, but one thing I've done is the minute I step up on the approach or just in front of the approach, before I pick up my ball, I put myself in a bubble and I start focusing on what I want to do and what the results I want. Then I get up on the approach, I take a deep breath, and I go from there. But it's very, very important when you're bowling league to try to remove yourself from that social situation.
Concentration is developed by repetitive shot making, and one of the best ways to do that is to make sure you see the ball roll over your target time after time. If you do this when you're practicing, you'll find that you will create the habit and thus do it in competition, and you won't notice the things that are happening in the bowling environment near as often. Many people are distracted by loud noises or other bowlers running up beside them. But if your concentration is such that you're only seeing your target and nothing else, then you'll find that those things no longer bother you.
Concentration will help you make more strikes and spares. And making those shots will build your confidence level frame by frame. Concentration, confidence. It's a winning combination. You've just seen and heard some things we all have to remember if we're going to bowl our best. But you'll notice that even among professional bowlers, not everyone does exactly the same thing. Personal style always plays a role. And Del, you have some thoughts along those lines.
As long as you have the fundamentals, people tend to develop their own style. And as I've seen over the years, and so have you, Dick, there's many different great bowlers from high back swings to low to medium speed to hard to very slow, and to a lot of revolutions, to a lot of hook, to throwing the ball very straight. So you can be very successful at all levels and while still developing your own style.
The best example of that is you and your son. Obviously, you took your son, you taught him the basic fundamentals, but then you let him go with what came naturally to him, and it really shows in the difference in your two styles. You've both won more than 20 PBA national championships, and yet their styles are totally different. So good fundamentals are important, and yet you can let your own, what comes naturally, be a big impact.
I think a good tip would be just to remain open-minded to the changes and to be able to take a 4-step or a 5-step if you need to, or be willing to change. The game has changed so much, as you well know, Dick, over the years. I'm sure you've had to change your game a time or two, and I think just being open-minded to make changes in your game can really help a player.
Well, that's for sure. I believe in experimentation any time, and still do. But, you know, you mentioned styles, and watching all of us bowl, we have so many different styles with the same delivery, 5-step delivery, and it's amazing. And, of course, you have to change with the eras as we go along.
Speaking of style, Steve, you know, when you and I were on the tour, I think we were known as couple of the more practice pros on the tour. We did a tremendous amount of practicing. Why did you practice so much?
Well, my game does not come as naturally as some of the pros out there, so I had to practice a lot and generate repetition in my game. You know, like you said, you and I and Dave Ozio and a few of the others really put in lots and lots of hours so that we don't have to think about anything. It just becomes so natural through repetition, where somebody like Petey or somebody has more natural ability, and they have, or Ameletto Monticelli the same way, where they just kind of flow up to the line. My game is much more physical than that, and I'd have to practice to create repetition.
And we had bowlers like that in the old days, too. You know, some of them had to practice 8, 10, 12 hours at a time before a tournament each day. And some of us just maybe went through 3 or 4 games because we could feel what we're doing. And that's what one of our tips were. You've got to feel or try to feel what you're doing out there with your 4-step or 5-step delivery.
Well, I know a real nice key that amateurs have told me across the country, and that they said, I really enjoy watching the women professionals because they have such great fundamentals, great basics, and this is something that I can relate to more so than trying to watch some of the male pros because they are so powerful. They really do hook the ball quite a bit more than a lot of recreational bowlers do. So they have a tendency to enjoy watching the women and able to relate to them.
Mm-hmm. And they're so solid. I know Steve has mentioned it many times that how the women are solid and balanced at the foul line compared to a lot of men, especially like myself. I always fall off to the right, and I know sometimes you have a tendency to fall off to your right too, Steve.
Sure. I think the fact that the ladies are not as big and strong, they have to be better than us. And I think when I do my coaching, I always recommend that the amateurs look at the ladies tour to see the good fundamentals. They usually have better timing, better balance at the foul line. Like Del was saying, the men have many different styles, and a lot of them, to be honest, aren't as good fundamentally as the women. They seem to always be in kind of prettier to watch. They have that really good timing, and so it's a good teaching habit to watch the ladies.
What do you think has been the major change? I mean, I've seen some tremendous changes just in the last 15 years that I've been involved with professional bowling. I mean, over 5 decades. I mean, you've seen some tremendous changes. What do you think is the biggest?
Well, we go back to the 50s, the 40s, and 50s, and we had hard rubber bowling balls in. And then we went to plastic bowling balls, and then urethane bowling balls, soft rubber bowling balls. Now we're in the era of reactive resin, which really is a great help to me because it gives me a little more back end, a little more hook on the back end. And I think Leila and I really look forward to that because we're more or less the straight shooters down the boards, let the ball hook in maybe 4 or 5 boards at the pocket, where you two fellas really hook the ball nicely. So it's a blessing to me to see reactive resin. And even I go back to the urethane sometimes too, according to the conditions of the lanes. I want to thank you very much for your input. I'm sure it's going to be a great help to our recreational league bowlers, and thank you again.
Thanks, Dick, for having us.
Okay,
thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dick.
And there you have it, another important tip. Work on the fundamentals, but don't try to bowl exactly like someone else. Doing what comes naturally will help you become a better bowler.
Well, chances are you're already doing a lot of things I've suggested perfectly well. But take my word for it. We all have things we can do to improve our games. If you're strong in some areas but weak in others, concentrate on just one of those weak areas at a time. In just a short time,